So what are the differences between a $300 paddleboard and a $1,000 paddleboard? For many people, it's hard to see. They kind of look the same. For the most part, probably doesn't make sense. We have to understand manufacturing or production in its most simplest terms. What the differences are comes down to two key factors. The first factor is the material. So it's the cost of the material, the quality of the material, and then following on from that, how long it takes to produce the finished product. So the materials vary vastly from very, very cheap, low quality to very, very expensive, precision made and very, very specific. And let's not go into marketing terms and spin and, trademarked terms, some of which are of course very famous because that's just sort of marketing mumbo jumbo. But the fundamental principle is that some materials are more expensive, they're lighter, they're higher performing, and then some materials are more generic and more sort of universal and can be used for more broad applications. So the first part is the cost of materials. A really easy one to think about is, say, for instance, the cost of titanium versus aluminium versus carbon steel. Most people can sort of wrap their heads around that, but you get a sort of a sense of the cost of materials. The second part to the equation then is how long it takes to produce the finished product. Now, in paddleboards specifically, what we know is that a HONU paddleboard, much like the handful of other high-end brands out there, they take about roughly 5 days to make. Your lower cost $300 paddleboards will go from start to finish in 1 day. What are the variables there? Of course, you have labor, you've got the real estate and all those other things. So fundamentally, when we talk about a product and the difference in cost, the largest portion of that cost is going to come down to the materials and then how it's made. And that plays out at every level. So for instance, we're talking about a paddleboard right now, but that same principle applies to the handles that are on the paddleboard. And of course, handles don't really matter until they break, and then they really matter. But also the accessories. So things like your paddles, your paddle carry case, for instance. Every material, every product that takes time to make will have these two influencing factors that will have a large predictor of the final price. So how do you tell? How can you tell? If you're out there looking at paddleboards, you certainly need to look closely beyond some of the fancy marketing terminology. One that we talk about quite a lot, of course, is the thickness of the material. The generic material that is used for gymnastics all comes out at 6 inches thick. It's also quite heavy. It's obviously quite cheap. So there is thickness of your board is one, the weight of the board is another, and then lastly, the pressure. So low quality production materials will have lower pressures than high quality, high material. So you're looking for something that is in the 20 PSI to 22 PSI sort of range. That's a bit of a dead giveaway. And if you can find some data, ideally from third parties, not the brand themselves, not even us, on how stiff that board is on a quantitative bench test. So the material weight, the material thickness, this material stiffness on the bench test, once it's pumped up to its working pressure, is going to give you a good indicator of the overall quality of the paddleboard specifically, and that'll help you see through all that marketing spin. The key differences between a $300 board and a $1,000 board is going to be the quality of the materials, the amount of time they've spent making it, how well it's going to perform out there on the water, and then to some extent, how well it's supported after the sale. So hope that helps debunk some of the mystery and smoke and mirrors associated with the price of paddleboards. I, as much as everybody else, think it can be very confusing and it's hard to cut through all of the marketing spin. So I hope that helps, and I'll see you out in the water.